There are a billion artists making stylized art inside of Blender, and often their stylization gets kind of boring, repetitive, or just falls flat altogether. Now it might work fine, but when you compare it to something a little bit more technical, it starts to look really cheap. Let me show you exactly what I mean with a comparison. Take a look at this fishing lure using flat color. Now it works, but there's nothing really special here. There are so many of these kind of chunky, boring models floating around on Instagram and Pinterest that it just kind of becomes noise. Now look at this exact same lure with a tiny bit more effort applied to it. There's more to look at. It's more visually interesting, and it was so easily done. My name is Elijah Sheffield. I'm a professional animator and educator. If you're interested in learning Blender, 3D animation, and mastering stylization, be sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Now this is an old grad school trick that I learned for breaking up flat colors. It was originally meant for background objects in games that needed a little bit more detail than zero, but I found that it can be used handily to add some controlled chaos to an otherwise boring color. It elevates the boring, overdone plastic object into something that reads a little bit more like intentional craftsmanship. So let's jump into Photoshop and we'll create some image maps. So we're going to start out in Photoshop, and we're going to choose ourselves a nice big chunky brush. I mean, that's essentially what we're wanting. We want something chunky and big to kind of break up the shapes. We're going to hop over here into color dynamics. You can just click this little folder icon right here, and you're going to find color dynamics. You can click it on with that with the little toggle here, and let's change the hue, saturation, and brightness jitter all to about 3%. I'm going to add in a new layer here, and we're going to start out with our red color. So I'm just going to choose myself a nice kind of dusty red. And we're just going to start out by drawing these large stripes here. It doesn't have to be anything special. We're going to come back in here and clean it up anyway, but just something to fill out the canvas, okay? And now I'm going to come back in and just kind of scribble. We're just going to make these kind of random scribbles. And as you can see there, because of the jitter, we're getting all these different color variations, and what it's going to end up doing is creating this kind of cool random color look to our actual scene. So now, in order to make this tileable, because we're going to use it as a triplanar projected texture, we need to actually make this so it's a seamless texture. We can do that really easily by going up to filter up here. We can go down to the other, and we want offset. Now, because this canvas is 4096, which is a 4K texture, we want to make the horizontal and vertical to line up perfectly with half of it, because we want it to split it right down the half. So 2048 is half of 4096, and we can click OK. And now we have a nice tiled texture. But you'll notice we have kind of this weird split in the middle. So what we're going to do is take our brush here now, and we're just going to kind of carefully brush out this seam so that we don't have any more pesky seams on top of that. What I'm going to do now is go through and I'm going to create another map for our white channel, or the white on the bobber. And I'm also going to make a black and white map that's going to be used as kind of a roughness map, okay? So I'll put that in 5x speed or however x speed, and you can watch me do that in real time. Okay, so now I have my three maps. I have the red map, I have the white map here, and I also have my gray map. We're gonna go ahead and export all three of these out now, and export them to somewhere you can access them really easily, and I'll see you in Blender. All right, so we're here in Blender now, and we're gonna start by opening up the shader editor. So we're gonna start with really just the red material. That's what we're going to work with, and we're going to build our shader, kind of build our stylization on the red shader, and then we'll duplicate it and change it to white, and that way we don't have to repeat ourselves twice and do redundancies. So we're going to start right here. We can click new, and that's going to add a new shader. We'll call this red stylized, like that. And we're just going to choose our red color right here, just again so you can kind of see what this looks like without any extra stuff to it. It looks okay. A large part of that has to do with the lighting, I think, but it looks okay like this, but we're going to make it look exponentially better. So in the shader editor here, if you have Node Wrangler enabled, you can click the Principled BSDF. We're going to hold down Control, Shift, and T. And if you named it right with roughness and color, we can select the red color and the roughness and import that, and it automatically knows what it's supposed to be. So the roughness is plugged into roughness and the color is plugged into color. If you did not do that, make sure that the roughness is actually set to non-color right here. So now if we preview this over here, we can see It's looking okay. We get some seams here where the UVs are, and that's why we're going to triplanar project this. So if you happen to have Payload, if you don't, you can find that linked below. But if you happen to have Payload, you can open it up and you can actually go to the red stylized here, and we can drop down, we can make this box triplanar. And now we have a nice triplanar projection on both of these, and we can select both of these and hit blend. But I'm also going to assume that you're just, you know, you're kind of a loser. You don't have Payload available to you. And I'm going to show you how to do this the long and arduous and annoying way. So the easiest way to do this without Payload is going to be by, again, in your shader nodes editor, you're going to change this from object over, or from UV over to object, just like that. You're then going to have to go to base color and change this from linear to cubic, and then from flat to box, and you're going to do the exact same thing down here from linear to cubic and from flat to box, and now it is triplanar projected. Think about all the time you could have gotten back if you just bought Payload. So again, we're going to select both of these right here, and we're going to increase by holding Alt to do both of them at the same time. We're going to increase the blend a little bit so that we lose that seam. If I zoom in here, you'll be able to see it better. This is with no blend. You see that hard seam right there, and this is with blend. It just kind of removes that seam and makes it look nice. So now if we take a look here, we can see we get some really cool texture variation on the actual color itself, as well as some roughness variation there. And I think that's about good for what we need. So now that we have the color and the sizing looking right, if we wanted to change our roughness, if maybe your roughness map was not as dramatic as you'd like or whatever, you can add in a color ramp node, if I can spell ramp correctly, and we'll just place it right there in between roughness and the roughness or the color output, excuse me, and the roughness input. And now we can actually play around with this map. I'll preview this. We can see if I crush the blacks a little bit, it's going to be a little bit more smooth, and if I increase the whites, it's going to be a little less smooth. And by kind of bringing these together, we're getting more dramatic peaks and valleys there. And I think something like that is going to be interesting. So we can already see it taking place here. If I sever both of these, this was the original, and this is with our roughness texture. It's a very interesting look. So again, we're not going to do this to the white texture quite yet. We're not going to do this to the white shader. We're just going to keep it in red. And in the next chapter, I'll show you how to make it look even better. Now, if you want this lure to take a closer look at, try it out yourself, consider joining members only right here on YouTube. You get access to the project files, exclusive videos, and admittance into the Fort, a private Discord server with myself and some super talented artists. It's $10 a month, it comes with a lot of perks, and it helps support the channel. So consider that if you're wanting a little bit more sweet boy or a little bit more community. All right, enough peddling my stuff. Let's finish by making our lure look exponentially better. So now that we have our color and our roughness map hooked up, I'm going to do a little bit of mixing magic to make it look even better. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a mix color node here, and we can just plunk it down right between the base color and the base color input. And we're going to drag this color output right into the B value. We can add in a HSV, a hue saturation value node. We can place it right here. And then if we just were to preview this, you can see we can play with the value, we can play with the saturation, and we can play with the hue. So I'm going to push the hue a little bit towards the maybe towards the red a little bit. We're going to drop the saturation down quite a bit, and we're going to increase the value. So if I preview this mix node again, we can see that it's giving a factor of 0.5. So if I go all the way to red, or all the way to 0 rather, it's going to be red. If I go all the way to 1, it's going to be this kind of light orange. So what I need to do is create a black and white map that's going to drive the values between the two. That way I can mix this kind of highlight on the very top of it. So I'm going to add in a color attribute node, and I can just set that down right here. And now we need to add in a color attribute. I'm going to connect this to the factor here. We're going to go down to the data properties panel, and then you can scroll down and you can find color attributes here. We're going to add an attribute called highlight. Okay, so we can select this and go into our vertex paint mode, and you can not really see it in material preview necessarily, but you can see it in solid, and we want to make sure we have the white value selected, so you can change that by hitting X, and we're just going to kind of paint on our white and black map. So if you wanted to do this with something like an image texture, that's totally appropriate. In fact, that would probably be much better. But we're just kind of doing it the cheap way. You can see exactly what's happening here. This is flat shaded, but we're getting that highlight on top just by painting it. So again, we're going to assign this to highlight, and now we're going to do the exact same thing, but for shadows. So I'm going to grab my mix color, my color attribute, and my HSV, and holding Shift, Command, and D, I'm going to duplicate all that and pull it way over here. And I'm going to replace this A value with our mix value right here. I'll plug that in there. and I'm going to delete that. I'll go back to the data properties panel down to color attributes. We will add another color attribute and call it shadow. And now we can just kind of preview our shadow here and look what it's going to look like. I'm going to now take it more towards the purples, so something like maybe 0.46. I'll increase the saturation up a little bit, and we'll drop the value way down, something like that. Okay. So now we're going to select our shadow map. We can view the mix. I'm going to go into solid mode here, and same thing. I'm just going to paint the vertex map, and I'm going to paint it to kind of have this shadow look. Now that looks actually pretty cool as just straight up a stylized texture, a cell shaded texture, but we want to make it stylized PBR. And so there we go. And now we can come back in here and dial in these values, okay? So I'm gonna go back into object mode. We can dial in some of these values here. This does not need to be so hot. This is almost like light is beaming down on top of it. We just want it to kind of feel faded on the top, something like that. And maybe I could even drop the saturation down more. And we can do something very similar for the shadow itself. So now we have a really nice shader. And the cool thing about this is it's very customizable. So if I take the red here, or take the second part of the lure, and I link the materials with the red, it obviously is not white yet. But what we can do is duplicate this, and we're gonna call this white stylized. And we're going to come back in here and we're going to change some of these parameters. The first thing we're going to change is actually taking this from the red color, and we're going to go to the white color right here. And now we can see it has the white texture map that we painted. Now this one, I might want to increase the scale of a little bit just to make it look a little more dramatic. I think that's pretty good at like 0.5. Now I can go back to the data properties panel. I can add two new color attributes. Again, I'm going to call this highlight. I can't spell. And I'm going to call this one shadow. And I'm going to go back in here and I can just start painting the same way that I painted the previous one. So I'm going to put that in 5x speed so you can watch me do that. Now we have some much more interesting looking textures on our model, and it took precious little effort to do so. Now these image textures don't inherently make something look excellent. It takes a little bit more finessing, but it creates enough variation to break up a solid, cheap, overly exercised Blender look. Try using this approach in combination with some sculpting and some grease pencil, and you end up with some really interesting results. Now, if you found this tutorial helpful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment what you'd like to see me teach next. Consider joining members only if you're so inclined, and be sure to tune into Off Model, my weekly live show, every week right here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central. Thanks so much for watching.